Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. Um, Tonight, I'm in shock and grieving, like many of us. Um, Thinking about George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and the racist traditions, the racism that is so deeply ingrained in our culture, not just the police culture, but in the entire culture. So I thought I'd read a few poems that deal with race and war, and uh, and a couple very explicitly political ones. This first one's a short bit. It's called "What Poetry Means." Poetry flows from my open veins, blood ribbons of word and meaning, rippling across nightstick rainbows. Poetry means fighting to save us while singing about it through tear gas and arsenic tweets and angels weeping. And this next one was, well, it's pretty self explanatory. Um, it's called Never Enough. The rich of this country have been taking more, buying more hacks, rigging more laws, throwing their voices through pinched faced men in dark suits, sitting on the lap of a giant orange plastic nightmare, a 3,000-pound Chucky, misquoting Bible verses while feeding on stolen, screaming children in cages. And yet, it's not enough. It will never be enough. And I think you can guess who I'm talking about, but also the system that put him in power. This one, who is winning? Those last two are just from the last half year or so. Who is winning was published in Big Hammer, I think last year or 2019. The sounds of war. The war shows on TV, the guns and bombs and drones. More people on the street as fewer jobs with any pay, those jobs that don't pay many bills. The war machines come home, they're everywhere now. The tanks are rumbling, the tanks and body armor and bodies falling. Young men in old gangs live out the capitalist dream of money, the money, do, re, mi, and all the guns money can buy. The cops on high alert, dealing with anger, insanity, and pain. The chase and the lights and the chase leaves them wired and full of guns. The war machines are the cops on high alert, and the ones assuming all dark-skinned men are targets. Terrorists are all dark-skinned men. Terrorists somehow are not white men in white sheets burning churches and killing children. Terrorists are everywhere. They wait for instructions in leaderless cells, in small rooms, tiny rooms, with the walls closing in. And who are the terrorists? Who are the good guys? How many 12-year-olds with BB guns need to die again and again and again? How many bankers were shot for stealing the country while a man selling loose cigarettes is strangled to death on TV? The sounds of war. War shows on TV. War, it's war. Who is the enemy? Who is winning? And this is also a fairly new piece. One of the things I do for my jobs is I'm a tutor, and because of my background, I'm often the person who tutors the folks who have more challenges. And so I've worked with more than a few young men and women with PTSD, and this was one of them. It's called Wounded. Alton was taking a break, smoking a cig, when the roadside bomb took all of his arm and part of his mind. That's how he explained it to me as I helped him deal with composition format. He stands up every 10 minutes or so, walks around and makes some of us nervous. His eyes are red, and sometimes he quotes, gets all jittery and shit. Not so strange in the larger picture that includes wounded men in a wounded country. Alton is angry and nervous all day, every day. And wanted to read a piece that has some humor in it, which is based on a real event. This is from the body of My Isla and Other Poems, one of my chapbooks. I think this one was from 2007. And again, this is a story based on something that happened to me when I was still an advocate for inmates and their families. The incident happened probably around 1988 or 89, but I didn't write about it until almost 15, 20 years later. Anyway, this is called A Case of Mistaken Identity, or Why I'm Usually Pissed Off. The man appeared waving a large knife. A machete? Could be. Anyway, he was Latin, Puerto Rican, and he robbed us last night. In the harsh light of the pizza house moment, the manager saw, quote, a Latino man, unquote, draw out a long knife and quickly put the tip to his sweaty neck. He got about $80, he said to the cops. Probably Puerto Rican, 5'10" or bigger, thick mustache, stocky build, dark skinned, probably Puerto Rican. And so the word crackled across nightstick radio. 10 hours later, Arturo was apprehended while leaving his uncle's house under suspicion of armed robbery and being Puerto Rican in Harrisburg. Arturo, with no past criminal history, 5'6", slender, clean-shaven Arturo with 5 eyewitnesses, was sent up. $30,000 bail set, and so Arturo was given the privilege of free room and board at Shea 501, orange jumpsuit, and a roach on the pillow, free of charge. Enter a hungover yet aggressive social worker, stage far left. I walk slowly to the table and sit across from a stone silent brother with an Indian face. Where were you on the sunny afternoon in question? I asked. He smiles and it quickly fades. I was making love to my cousin's wife. Silence. Jaded as I am, smirk and roll my eyes. Do you have anyone to back up your statement? 5 people, he says. In a moment, I'm on the horn with his lawyer. He's telling me in court-appointed numb tones that the police do not consider his witnesses valid. The lawyer, this lawyer, who I remembered had been a human when we first met, was explaining that they would not consider the testimony of, quote, the others, unquote, being 5 Puerto Rican others, because their testimony was biased. I tried explaining this to Arturo, and he looked at me with pity and said, so you're surprised? Shit, my boss called yesterday to tell me I'm fired, but at least I'll be out real soon. Eventually, I was able to uncross my eyes and made it to the preliminary hearing, the first step in the digestion process of the injustice system. They led Arturo to the table, handcuffed, and watched closely. And for the first time, the pizza manager got to look at him and yelled, "Hey, that's not the guy." Case dismissed. Life ruined. Fuck you. You're only poor and Puerto Rican in Harrisburg in the 20th century. And I'll wrap it up with a poem I wrote for and to one of my heroes. And this was sort of published. It was included in a collection of poems that were given to Amiri Baraka on his 70th birthday. And it got back to me that he did like the piece. This is called The Great Black Hunter, Amiri Baraka. The terrible weight of the truth crushes normal men with normal minds. The terrible sting of the imperial wasp bloats their heads and they float skyward, flailing their arms and calling for family values. But the terrible weight can be lifted, and the sting of the monster is not always fatal. Baraka has been mind muscle training, and he studies the poison to get at the cure. Shooting his poems from jazz socialist shotgun wildly, I think of Baraka at the strangest times. On 2 a.m. bleary, sleepless night, while watching Dawn of the Dead, Baraka fighting zombies. Yeah, that works. Swinging a shovel and quoting Coltrane while saving the earth. And that's it for tonight. Thanks for listening. I think all of this trauma is giving me ideas for my next book, anyway. And I'll talk about that later. But thanks. Be safe. Be a good ally. Listen. Put your body on the line. Thanks.